Karen, I did not create a slide. You probably had figured that out by now. Welcome, friends. We'll call the meeting to order here at 6:01 on Monday, April 29th. I'll ask my colleagues to make sure their microphones are on and in position so that we're speaking up today. And we'll start with a roll call.
Mr. Funes Bliss?
Here.
Ms. Butler Challenger here. Ms. Wilson? Here. Ms. Hagerman? Here. Ms. Kellerman?
Here.
Mr. Phillips?
Here.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Here.
Thank you.
Let's move to item 2 on the agenda, which is a civic reflection. For those that don't have a copy of the agenda, there's copies up at the lectern. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance and end with a moment of silence. So if you're able to stand and would like to, stand and join us.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Now a moment of silence. Thank you. We're here tonight for a couple of reasons. Originally, we had a special meeting planned to talk solely about the Senior Services Advisory Board. Since we canceled our last meeting, we've added the timely items that need to be accomplished by the end of the month to the agenda as well. It's just a handful of things, but what you won't see on here is the typical regular meeting, day-to-day stuff that we do. We'll move that to next week's meeting, at which time we also have a special meeting to talk about the Park Lake Trail, or the proposed Park Lake Trail, and also a regular meeting immediately following. On today's proposed agenda, there is a small error under new business, number 6, large B, items for action. We have mistakenly listed the public safety millage from the Finance Committee as an item for action. You all have not seen that before, so this is meant to be an item for discussion. So I would propose that we move 6BB instead to 6AB.
A second.
Did you want me to put that in motion?
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I'll move, well, is there, do you mind if I ask if there's any other, are there any other changes before we do that? Well, then I'll make a motion to approve the agenda with that change.
Second.
A second. Any other discussion? Is everyone clear on what we just did?
Yep.
All right, we'll do this by voice vote. So all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? All right, motion carries. Disclosure of conflicts of interest. Does anyone have a conflict of interest to disclose today?
I'll mention again that I'm on the School Museum Committee and they're an action item today.
Oh.
Sure. I'll just mention again that I'm on the Bass School Museum Committee and they are an action item today.
Thanks, Kate. All right, that brings us to item 5, which is public statements. These are limited to 3 minutes. They're designated for statements concerning the current agenda items only. There will be a second opportunity at the end of the meeting for another public statement where each of you will have an additional 3 minutes to talk about anything under the sun you'd like to share with us. I see we've got our first person.
Yes, Dennis Lardy, Bath Township, Coleman Road. When I joined the Senior Advisory Board many years ago, Alan Rosecrans was also a member, and he's the one that encouraged me. And he worked with me and the other members, and together we accomplished a great deal of things. We helped write the grant that got us a new kitchen. We got a wonderful deck added to the senior center. Alan and I spent a lot of our own personal time hunting up tables, chairs, and umbrellas for that deck. Alan and I organized the medical equipment shed together. We picked up the Christmas tree from Barb, who was also on our board, and she donated it to the center, and we currently still use that Christmas tree. We also helped Barb move items from her shed to her apartment. Senior Advisory Board also, the members delivered care packages on holidays to seniors this year during COVID. I chaired our participation in Bath Days for the Senior Service Advisory Board, the table that we had there for 3 years running. These are just a few of the accomplishments that we have made. Alan, you and I both know the potential that the Senior Advisory Board can have if given the chance. But since COVID, we've had our hands tied. We've been told not by Ryan Field and Bliss not to fundraise anymore. He said it was not our job. So what about our addition? What about our expansions? What about those people that get turned away because there isn't enough seating? We were told by Karen not to interfere in the running of the senior center, nor offer assistance to the coordinator. She might quit, is what Karen told me. Are you aware that this little girl was hired based on the fact that she had only planned one activity in her whole life, a wedding? That doesn't have anything to do with senior activities. And she told me this herself. It's no wonder that the seniors keep asking us senior advisory board members, what's going on? What happened to our activities? What happened to our trips? Our response to them has to be, we were taken out of the loop. And we seldom get replies to our emails or phone messages that we leave. I cannot believe that any of you board members would agree with these random injustices and new rules that have been instituted against the Senior Service Advisory Board. I've been living in Bath Township for about 67 years, and never have I known the township to be in more disorganization or corruption that exists in this current regime.
Thank you. That's
Thank
good
you.
lawsuit since it's a public
Is there
statement.
anyone
I
else that would
that.
like to address the board?
I'm very happy he did that. He made a public statement that we're.
I'm Joy Lott from Coleman Road.
That will end up good for him.
I was there when I was 14, that was quite a long time ago. I am at the senior center 3 days a week, most every week. But something that is good is happening in Bath. That's exceptional. And I think we're something to be proud of. The ladies came to our table today. I said, I think you were here Friday. She said, yes. I moved into Lansing on Thursday. I asked somebody where I should eat. She said, oh, there's such and such a place over in Bath. So she said, she told me the menu sounded good. I guess I'll try it. She came back today. She said, boy, that was good, and this is a fine place. And she enjoyed visiting and meeting new people as we visited on the table. I'm really proud of what we do over there. I was sick and thought that I couldn't go, so I said, oh, I'm sure going to miss that food. Well, I've got lots of food at home. But it wasn't the food I missed. Who was going to do this, and who was doing that, and what happened? How are they feeling, and what's going to happen next? I missed the association also. Many people can't get that association, and I'm sorry for that. They do get good food, and the person that takes the meal, I did one today, you chat a little bit, and you get to say hi and talk about something about it besides being sick. I think we should be proud that we have it, and I think you should give us all support.
Thank you. Is there anyone else who would like to make a public statement?
My name is Jean Jones. I've lived in Bath Township about 23 years. I can't rival Dennis, but I've lived here about 23 years and been going to the senior center for many, many years. And I have watched it grow, and I personally play cards on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday in the morning. And we were told today that we had to stop playing cards at 11 o'clock. If we were going to sit at the round tables, we couldn't save a spot there. We had to quit playing cards if we were going to sit at the round table, or we had to eat at the card tables. And so I had shared with the board a month or so ago. The idea came to me one night that we do an addition on the senior center, not the big expansion that we had originally asked for, but an addition that would give us a room for card tables, to play cards, to put the puzzle table in there, and to socialize in there. And it would also free up that space at the end of the room for more tables for eating. And so I'm hoping that when that is addressed or brought up to the board, that you will give that your attention, and hopefully positively, because we just need a little more room.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to address the board tonight?
I got a simple question. How old you gotta be?
Go ahead and step up to the lectern there, if you would. Our viewers at home can't see or hear you if you're back there.
My name's Charlie Cronk. I'm from Bath. I don't live here now, but once in a while I work over here. How old you gotta be to go to the senior center?
No age, there's no
No
age.
age.
55, but.
Oh, okay.
No, you don't even have to be 55.
No.
64 tomorrow.
There you go, Charlie.
Would anyone else like to address the board tonight on any item on the agenda? All right. Let's move on to item number 6. New business. Large A is items for introduction and discussion. Small A is Senior Services Advisory Board. I'll start with an introduction. Judy Gardy, our Senior Services Advisory Board Chair, will speak during opportunity number 2, and then our township staff will address the board in option number 3. So when I was first made supervisor, the chair of the Senior Services Advisory Board, Judy, sent me an email saying, what is the vision for the board? What should we be working on? And I thought those were really great questions. But I also thought they weren't questions that I could answer myself. We operate as a board. I certainly have some ideas, but I know each of you have some ideas as well. So that's what brought about today's meeting, a chance for us all to talk about what role the Senior Services Advisory Board should play and what they should be focused on. We did some digging back in the annals of history today and found some of the original notes from when the committee was started back in 2009. So in February of 2009, there were 7 names put forward to serve on the Senior Center Advisory Board. And you can see in the minutes from the following meeting, which I think is February 17th, 2009, there's some back and forth between board members talking about the size of the board. It was originally proposed to be a senior advisory board. There was a lot of interplay between the board members about the name and should it be about the senior center or about senior services in the township. Ultimately, the board landed on naming it the Senior Services Advisory Board, and that it would be about senior services, not just the senior center. So that passed, and we've been meeting as a Senior Services Advisory Board ever since in different formats with different boards with different members. We also have some material from Michigan Townships Association that guides a township board on creating a committee. Some of the things, thank you. Some of the things that are meant to be considered is establishing the scope or the limit of the committee's purpose. reviewing the committee's recommendations, and that final decisions are always made by the board and not the committee. A committee has no authority to spend money. Any expenditures or payments would be made through the clerk and the treasurer following board approval. A committee should not have its own bank account, checking, or credit card. So we see some of the limitations of what a committee should look like that are, steeped in statute that MTA has brought out for us today. So I'm hoping that our conversation today will be about what our vision is for the role of the Senior Services Advisory Board. We know that they are not a facilities management group, so managing the senior center is not what they have been designated to do. So what are we hoping they do over the course of time? Ultimately, remember that they are an advisory board, and as we have created and when I say we, I don't mean us folks, but the boards of the past, as they have created committees, advisory committees at least, were created to give advice to the board. To seek feedback, to get guidance so that members of our community can participate in their own community and provide us with guidance. I think the Senior Services Advisory Board, along with many of our other committees, doesn't have a free flow of information to us in that way that it probably did years and years ago. We don't necessarily see a lot of formal recommendations coming from a lot of committees. How we ask committees to do things has changed. So I think there's probably some lessons learned in these historical documents for many of our committees, but it makes sense since the Senior Services Advisory Board is the first to ask that question that we start with them, which I think is a great place to start. So that's some of the background to why this conversation is happening, how we hope to function tonight. I'd like to invite up Judy Gardy from the Senior Services Advisory Board. And Judy, if you could keep this relatively brief, I want to be able to move into the discussion part because that's what we're here to do. We'd love to hear your thoughts. I know you've been meeting with the Senior Services Advisory Board talking about this meeting and what you all hope to accomplish as well.
Thank you, Ryan, and good evening. In preparation for the meeting, I did ask Ryan if we could provide you with any materials which would be helpful. I got no response, so in the absence of a response I prepared for you, I put it in your mailbox and emailed it to you. A summary of the work that we've been doing for you and in your name for the last 18 months. I want to start by introducing the members of our group here tonight, the Senior Services Advisory Board. Ben Barker back at the back, Dana Conley, Jean Jones, Nancy Hoyland, Dennis Lardy, Deb Johnson, and Joy has been in the past on our board, and I'm happy to see them all here tonight in support of the work that we do. I'd just like to start by looking at the situation that we find ourselves in at the Senior Center based on current and historic data. I've been before you before talking about this, but just to remind you, in 2013, the Senior Center was serving an average of 39 meals a day. In 2019, interestingly enough, they were serving an average of 38 meals a day. We have been working on outreach, the Senior Services Advisory Board, and in 2022, we were serving an average of 62 meals a day, and now the number is even larger, and hopefully Karen has more current data on that. But today alone, we serve 96 meals. Just picking a month and a year, if you think about those numbers, in the month of March of 2023, the staff prepared a total of 936 meals. That's a lot of meals to prepare for our seniors. The first thing that I did when I was asked to join the Senior Services Advisory Board was ask how best I could help the group. And they said, well, we have a stove in the kitchen that only has 3 burners that are working, and if you could find the money to get us a new stove, it'd be great. So I did some research and I found a grant that was available from the Capital Region Community Foundation, a community impact grant. I wrote the grant and I worked with the Township administration. Ryan presented the final presentation to the Capital Region Community Foundation Board of Directors. They had 30 submissions. They chose 5. They selected 5 to choose between. Ryan did an outstanding job and we were selected. And that's how we have our commercial kitchen in the Senior Center right now. Nonetheless, we've actually outgrown the kitchen. And to keep up with the growth of the programs and the services, we have to expand the kitchen and/or the dining room. Because currently, there's no room at the table for people to sit. That's why so many people are taking their lunches to go. At your request, we held a community conversation on the needs of the senior center. We reported our findings to you. We hired an architect, brought you drawings and current quotes on what had been discussed during the conversation based on its recommendations. We brought that to you in time for the budget process. It was $500,000 and it wasn't considered, and it wasn't put in the budget. So now we have taken the space where the porch is, looked at putting a 17 by 17 addition on the building that would allow for the space, which Jean has spoken to, that would cost $175,000. Now, we as a senior services advisory board have been raising money since we got that commercial kitchen to help in the funding of the expansion. You have to keep in mind now that over 26% of the population in Bath Township is over the age of 55. It's growing by leaps and bounds. Becca currently is doing a needs assessment for us for the kitchen to determine exactly what the needs in the kitchen are. But our numbers continue to grow. We have a fantastic senior center. Our activity participation is growing, and there are great things happening. As Joy said, it's a great place to be. People love the senior center. It's great to be open on Tuesdays and Thursdays. We need partners and collaboration. We need services for our seniors. Services is a really interesting aspect of the senior center. If you think about our seniors, we all have needs. They range from needing help with your taxes to finding a doctor to figuring out how to get your water or your electricity put back on. This aspect, along with other programs and activities, remember we have a full house every day when we serve a meal, needs special attention. Services require counseling, advising, connecting with resources, follow up to see that they get the service and the help that they need, advocacy to resolve problems, and follow up. We created a resource guide specific to Bath Township and Clinton County, which is very useful, and gave it to the director of the coordinator at the senior center. But we also need wellness checks to develop partnerships to assist in bringing the right kind of health promotion and education to the senior center. We need a newsletter. What the center needs is leadership. All of the above, which I have spoken of, needs leadership, needs a director. Working together, we can develop partnerships and we can develop collaborations, but without the ability to communicate with the senior center and with the leadership at the senior center, it's very difficult for us to do our work. We'll be happy to discuss with you anything that we have provided you, any information that you have any questions about, and we are here and we can answer your questions, and we'd be happy to do so.
Thank you, Judy. So I'd like to turn it over to our superintendent, Karen Hildebrandt, to have sort of the last word before we enter into our discussion.
Thank you. I was not prepared to discuss numbers here because I thought we were talking more about the advisory board than I thought we were the senior center. Off the top of my head, what I can share with you is that we have approximately 200 emergency contact sheets on file with the township staff that work in the senior center. And not to try to break this down against residents and not residents, but because we have been in the past encouraged because of our attendance by non-residents to continue what we're doing. So I know that we're helping people from surrounding communities. We have approximately 88 people that are from the Bath community, which is about 44%. And then we have people that join us from DeWitt, Grand Ledge, Lansing, St. John's, Langsberg, so they'd come to us from all different areas. In the past 2 years, I would say year and a half, since 2023, 75 new people have joined us, which is very encouraging. And 24 of those people were also from Bath. So we are experiencing considerable growth, so I would agree with that completely. Staff has been looking at expanding the kitchen in a better way to understand how food preparation is taking place. There are, as Judy mentioned, a great deal of meals being served. I don't have historical data with me, but I will mention that a very popular day on April 8th was meatloaf. 118 people came for meatloaf, which is a very popular meal there. Any type of comfort food is. Almost 50 of those were to-goes. I'm looking for the next highest day, which I think would be chicken and dumplings. And on that day, we had 95 meals that were served, and 42 of those were to-go. The center itself holds 85 people. I always take 5 off the top for staff, which means we can sit 80 people. And that is designed, in my mind, to be, when I say comfortably and safely, is because some of our older adults have walkers, some of our older adults have canes, and so we want them to be able to move between the tables and be able to not trip or catch their foot on anything and hurt themselves there. So I can bring, if this is going to be an ongoing discussion, we have historical data on meals served and to-goes. I think what is impressed upon me at this time is that the number of to-goes are increasing, and I don't necessarily think it's because there's nowhere to sit. I do think it's because we have people, and I know these people personally, that have a loved one at home that is homebound, and they come to purchase a meal for themselves and their husband or wife, and then they take that home to share that meal with them. I do think this is a vital service, and I see nothing but growth in this area and hope to improve the center so that we can handle food preparation better, that we can hold more food, people, that our cooks could be able to go and shop and buy more food that can be stored throughout the week and be prepared. And I think that there's probably a better way for us to handle the to-go meals that we are serving that doesn't quite as impact inside the center as it is currently. I don't know if that's a window. I don't want to commit to anything, but I'm saying I think there's a better way for us to do that. As far as coordinators go, maintaining a coordinator for a long term has been a challenge. I know that someone earlier spoke to the credentials of a young lady that just left our employment, but we've had 11 coordinators in the last 12 years, which is a staggering number if you think about having to train somebody almost every year to do a job, and that you want them to have a relationship with the seniors. They are not social workers, but they do establish relationships with our seniors, and sometimes they're the first line of defense in knowing if something's wrong medically with one of our members, if they seem to just be off a little bit or they seem lonely or isolated. Sometimes that person is the first line of defense in recognizing that and being able to have conversations with them and maybe find services that they do need. Judy mentioned a resource book. I don't know how to, it's stored electronically, so forgive me. A resource guide that has been very instrumental. I believe that one of the people that is here today, I thought I saw Kim here. Thank you, Kim, was one of the people that helped us develop that resource guide, and that is referenced and used to help people at the center. One area where we have struggled and where I think we will continue to struggle is I think that our meals are hugely popular. I think card playing is hugely popular, and I think bingo is hugely popular. I think when we try to move into suggested areas for programs, I have in front of me a list of programs that has been compiled over the last couple of years. That includes hearing aid checks, which we hold that once a month so that people can get their hearing aids cleaned and checked and identify any issues they might be having. There's a Medicare advisor that used to, I can't speak to if this is currently happening because we do have someone new in the position, used to come once a month right before lunch if anybody was interested. We do have, obviously, some things that were hugely popular that the Senior Services Advisory Board did work on, such as the Elvis Show and the Kenny and Dolly Show. We've had oldies concerts. We've had about 20 people attend those. We regularly host holiday parties such as Halloween, Christmas, Thanksgiving. Bingo is hugely popular on Friday. We currently play for prizes, and once a month we pay for money as well. There have been other things that have been suggested that have been less popular. Hospice workshop, diabetes workshop, in-home care workshop, flu vaccinations. There have been no interest in those activities, at least in the last couple of years. We've had a pharmacist come speak during lunch and had a couple of people that participated in that and asked questions. There was no interest in a walking club. I offer these things not as a criticism because I think people clearly want to do what they want to do, and I think they're enjoying socialization. I think they're completely enjoying the meals, and I do think that they are enjoying card playing and bingo playing. So I don't have any criticism for that at all. As far as senior center meals, I will indicate that over the last, I'll go back to 2021, the actual revenue brought in ranges anywhere from $15,000 to almost $34,000 for meals. I can indicate to you that the township's general fund has been supplementing the revenue to the senior center and supporting the senior center for several years, long before I came here in 2012. But as of late, in the last couple of years, it's been at a number of 155,000, 134,000, 160,000. And we did see COVID had a large impact on the numbers of people that we serve and the money that we put into it. Some people still are scared to come out, and that's just the reality, I think, of the world we live in. Some people still prefer to wear masks. Some people prefer to be around other people that wear masks, and I understand that. So some of those people continue to get their meals to go. I don't want to just talk this whole time, so if there are questions from the board, I don't know if this is the appropriate time, but I am available for questions if you have questions at this time, or if you have specific things that you would like to hear about.
I think your first inclination was right. Our topic tonight is the Senior Services Advisory Board. We're not debating expansion of facilities at this point. So are there other services that the township provides, other things beyond what's happening at the senior center that would benefit from guidance from an advisory board?
I do think that there is a program in the area that most recently, I think as a result of COVID and some other circumstances, there was a diaper bank in the Lansing area. And one of our previous coordinators, her name was Brittany Matsumoto, when she found out they were kind of going defunct, she took the township van and she loaded up as many incontinence supplies as she could. And she brought them back to the township, and I think, matter of fact, she took a couple of trips and took everything that they had that we could use. There's still a stockpile in the basement, and I think that at some point we are going to see that inventory dwindle, and I do think it will be incumbent upon us to figure out how we continue that program, whether there's a diaper or an incontinence supply drive. So I think that there is a service that, to the much larger community, not just the senior center, I think we have people there that use that service. I also think there are people in the community and some other communities surrounding us that also need that service. So perhaps being able to promote that service and to keep the stock of inventory full would be critical, and I think that that would be an area where that would be important for the Senior Services Advisory Board to assist.
That's helpful. Thank you. Other questions? Go ahead, Sherry.
I'm just kind of the liaison here, guys, and please tell me if I'm missing something that we've talked about that is there
Speak into your mic, please, Sherry.
I'm sorry. Is there going to be a director? Is a new coordinator there? That a lot of things that I've heard from these folks is we've been several months wanting, big deal, but name tags, a greeter at the door. And I personally, since I go there fairly often, that a lot of people walk in and maybe don't pay because there's nobody catching them as they come in the door or greeting them. Welcome to our center. I think that's really important. And I've been asked by the group here that does a lot of time and work, are we going to have a director? Are we going to have some greeter? Can we have name tags? It's only been about a year that they've been asking me this. And I also have heard from 3 people, and this is just for public information, that I'm the only trustee that has been there in 3 years. I don't know if that's true or not, but I've heard it from 3 different people. And I think that's too bad, because I think we should look and go and see. I've been in there, Monday I was there, I took a picture and sent it to everybody. There were no seats left. And if you don't go and see it, you don't really realize it. And people have to carry their meal home and they don't have the social greeting. So those are things, and I think we're missing some money because people come in and there's just you just walk in. I've almost done it. As I go in and talk to people and, gee, I might forget to pay.
So I would offer that we cannot continue to have staffing that is educated and knowledgeable of what happens at the senior center, and then financially responsible when we're having turnover of 1 person per year. So Becca Slocum, yes, has been put in the situation of directing the senior center as well as the recreation programs and the farmers market. So she is, she's been attending, I believe, the Senior Services Advisory meetings for the last couple of months, and is very knowledgeable in adult programming as well as senior programming. So you will continue to see her. As far as a couple of years ago, our accounting firm recommended that we close a gap of a risk that we were having, which was we had a cash box that was right by the door. And so the cash box was recommended to be removed from by the front door and moved into an area that was more secure, which is the office behind the window. And that's the position that Linda Borrego currently fills by taking lunch money and handling those people as they come through. I think that if there are name tags being requested, I think that's, whether they're sticker name tags with a marker or whatever they are, I think we can accommodate that. It's supplies that we can order. And then the complicated part comes into if there's a volunteer that would like to, I guess, wait by the door and greet people as they come in, but currently not having a full-time person in there limits the ability of us to be able to greet people as they come in.
Can you talk more about what Becca is assigned to do?
So Becca is facilitating programs for the senior center, and she's been creating programs the last couple of months. And I could pull those up on the website. Again, I wasn't prepared to speak to the operations of the center, so I didn't pull those documents up sooner. But the last couple of months, there's always a birthday celebration. There's any holiday celebrations that occur during that time. I'm just moving to try to pull that up right now.
She is not functioning as a senior center director.
That's correct.
She's doing programming
She's
as
doing
part of her
programming.
programming job?
Mhm.
Okay.
So, and part of that includes their fiber hour with coffee and donuts at the center, March birthday celebration, cash pay to play bingo, hearing testing and hearing aid checks, book recommendations by Bath Township Public Library. Books were available to be checked out on site, a spring craft and a movie, and then a book potluck at the senior center. And that was in addition to regular events that are taking place, which include hand and foot, euchre, line dancing, chair yoga, ukulele sessions, and bingo.
So on the staff side, who is in charge of the facility and the staff over there?
So Taylor Reeves Hodges is deputy superintendent. She oversees Becca in her role, and she also oversees the staff of the senior center in their roles as well.
Okay.
I guess the other request that I've heard is pre-COVID, we had food 5 days a week, is that correct? From outside sources, not necessarily, that we had food sources from outside 5 days a week pre-COVID. I wasn't here, but I understand that's right. And I understand from you all that that is really missed and has been asked for, and it's the feeling of running into a wall and not getting things done by the people that I'm trying to talk for, that it breaks down somehow, somewhere.
So that was discontinued because ultimately the staff was cooking 5 days a week. And when that is occurring, there is absolutely no time for those people to shop and to prepare food for the other 3 days a week. We were serving food from other restaurants like Mexico to go. And it was not popular. If we had 3 to 5 orders, it was not very popular. And I would add that to the standards that we try to make a healthy home-cooked meal, it was also not the same quality of food that had been being prepared at the township by our staff. So prior to that, we were trying to do a lighter sandwich and soup. Those days, if we had, I'm reaching back and I don't want to be inaccurate, but if we had 10 to 15 people, we were lucky on those days for food. So while I think there's a desire for food 5 days a week, I don't think that in reality it was as supported as we had thought it would be.
Perhaps other options. Again, I'm speaking for things I've heard for the last year from these guys, that maybe some other option for food is possible. Some other restaurant, the schools, maybe there's a possibility we can get food in there from the schools. It's something I hear that we want.
Okay, I just don't, I mean, I'm willing to try, but I don't see there being a benefit. It's not, I am told by a lot of people that they use those days to go other places. People like to go to the casino, they like to have doctor's appointments, they do other things on those days. So I don't know if they would be supported. I'm trying to look where you're looking and engage with the public, because I feel like people are talking to you.
I just heard a little rumble potluck, but I think
Okay,
the
yeah.
legality of that is difficult.
No, it's very
You can't.
difficult with our
Right.
food license.
Yeah, that's why,
Yeah.
bringing in food for public there's all kinds of food laws.
It creates big problems for our
right.
food license.
But the school would be one thing somebody mentioned that was a possibility. Again, I'm bringing things to you all that I'm hearing from our folks, and if we can't support the seniors and the veterans in this community the best that we possibly can, it's upsetting to me.
I think we are.
We are.
I don't
They have 5 days
understand
a week
where.
to go to the center.
I'm hearing frustration from our seniors.
What I have heard, Sherry, when I went to the Senior Services Advisory Board, and I'm hearing a bit of it from you, is people have ideas, and if they don't see those ideas manifest, there's some anger. But what I think the Senior Services Advisory Board is not geared to do is demand what is happening at the senior center, right? They're not running the facility.
Right.
So sometimes the answer is gonna be no, for whatever reason, laws, money, limitations. And I felt that as I tried to provide that to the board, it was a very unwelcome message.
Well, we did afford to investigate the expansion, correct, guys? And we wanted to talk about that and see what's happening with that. And that should be part of this discourse, I think.
No, we're not
Not.
debating the facilities
okay, okay,
expansion today.
okay.
We've already made a decision.
Communication
that's not
on
in
it, then is what
Yeah,
we need to-
communication, I
okay.
think, is a very real topic. Because I know, Karen, you've had some concerns about communication as well from the committee, right?
Yeah.
From and to?
From and to. I do feel that Ryan's assessment is accurate, that if sometimes things aren't picked up and done, that there is frustration by the committee, that they feel like they aren't being heard, but for whatever reason, those ideas don't work for staff. So it's unclear to me. It's difficult to operate in a place where I think there are broader needs in the community that need to be met, but the focus always seems to be on the senior center. And that is, I don't know why that is. Even looking back today in the minutes of when it was created, it wasn't intended to be that. And so I don't understand sometimes why that is always the focus.
Karen, can you talk about some of our other committees and how they're operating? Because I assume that the police and fire board isn't telling the police chief what happens at the police office. And I assume that planning commission isn't directing our planner on specific things that aren't statutory. Is that a safe assumption?
It is a safe assumption. I would even offer that the recreation committee is not directing Becca on what programs should be held or not held at the farmer's market or just in general at recreation. But they're giving input on a 5-year plan. They are helping with goals and objectives, but not of the department, of the community as a greater whole.
Okay, that's helpful, thanks. Other questions?
I got a question. So was the Senior Service Advisory Board really put together so they could do outreach within the community?
The minutes are a bit sparse.
Okay.
So I don't want to read into something that isn't here. Trustee Clark at the time, this is our former supervisor Paula Clark when she was a trustee, stated that in all the discussions that they have been having, it has been along the lines of providing services to seniors and not just the senior center. Trustee Curtis stated that his only problem with these appointments is the name of the committee. With the new senior housing being constructed down the road, that the name Senior Center Advisory Board seems limiting to just the building. The former Superintendent Feltman suggested that it be called Senior Services Advisory Board, and that was agreeable to all. The second piece in here that I didn't talk about earlier, a second motion that was made was to create the Senior Center Enterprise Fund, which was to take the funds out of the general fund. I know I'm telling you things you know better than perhaps other people. But the key was that when donations came in, and you heard Judy mention donations, that if there was an enterprise fund, those donations would stay in that fund as a fund balance and wouldn't get sucked up by the general fund. So that is how we currently operate still, and that money is kept in that fund for use for the senior center.
So really, they were never giving what their goals were at the very beginning when it was formed.
I don't want to say yes or no to that. We don't have video from 2009. I can only read what's in this, over a decade long old document.
Okay.
It's unclear from this. And there's nothing before this or right after this where a bigger discussion was happened. So I imagine that not all the details are in here.
Okay.
Which is appropriate for minutes, but it is hard to sort of guess
Maybe
at
we
this
should do
point.
that.
What's that?
Maybe we should do that, that we could make a new
Make them
format,
goals.
make rules,
No, not rules, but goals for
goals
them.
and formats and how to proceed with
I mean,
That's what I'm hoping
communication.
tonight is.
I mean,
Yeah.
I really.
Right, the guidance for
yeah.
the advisory board on
We need-
what we want them to do is
We
the
need it
question. I was
written
asking. I
out
didn't mean to cut you off,
and-
sorry.
No, you're fine.
clarified.
I mean, because I've been looking at reading and everything, and I think their mission really should be to do outreach within the community, and I know they've done that, but I don't, it sounds like sometimes that they have tried to step in and run the senior center and what things have been trying to be done there.
Hold on, folks. Hold on, folks.
Well, I've watched your meetings.
I don't disagree with you, Jennifer. I will say that I even think doing outreach is probably inappropriate for an advisory committee. Certainly, there's the outreach community to community, neighbor to neighbor, and we would, all of our committees should be doing that. But in terms of like taking on the role of the township and doing outreach, I mean, like with our other committees, that's happening at the staff level.
Okay.
Is that fair to say, Karen?
I think it is.
But it does then leave the question, what
What is their job? What is their goals?
To advise, it sounds like what the needs are for these people, they are to, as a group, advise us as a board. We need more space, for instance. We don't have a private area for exercise that's a need that I'm hearing so loudly. And so they're advising us
Yeah.
to do this.
Yeah,
And then we got to decide, come up with an answer to this, maybe write it out every 2 weeks when we meet. We have this is a list of things and get a clear answer, something, so maybe the frustration could lower.
sure, I think that makes a ton of sense. Where I have been frustrated is I feel like we've done that. We made a decision not to do an expansion. We didn't have $500,000. It was not our priority at the moment. That doesn't mean it's not a good idea. I love it. It just means we're not able to do that. So I feel like the answer has been given to no, but even tonight, you're hearing people are pitching us on the expansion. And I get people want it to happen, but at this point, we as a board made that call back when we did the budget
That was
and then did the
the
ARPA.
largest one, and then there's a smaller proposition here to be a one-room and a basement tornado shelter, et cetera, which, can we afford it? I think it's important. We're crowded. I mean, there wasn't a chair left there. Come visit. You won't get food. You'll have to take it home, but you can visit.
What would you say, Sherry, is the limitation to how big we grow? Should we continue to grow as long as more and more people are coming? Like, at what point have we invested an appropriate amount of energy and money in context with the rest of our budget and activities?
Well, our elder population is growing and growing, so I think we need to consider this. We also need fire trucks, I know, but to consider this in the budget and keep the dialogue open.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it. My fear is, I bet the rec committee wants another park. And I would love another park. We know that Park Lake Advisory Board is interested in the trail. If we asked every department and every committee what they'd like to have, we know that the list is long and it's all good stuff. And I've not heard anybody say, I don't like this project. It's just like the limitation
I'm
of
hearing
the
it, yeah, everywhere I
reality
go.
that we have. But it does feel like, I've read the Facebook posts, I've heard, when I'm not present in a meeting, I've watched the meetings, and we're painted as anti-senior, and it's really tough. It's part of our job to sort of take those licks with everything else, but we are limited in terms of our resources. I've been ignoring this side over here, I'm sorry, I've been turned. Do you have other thoughts to add to this?
I just had, I guess, questions in terms of revenue, financials. I'm assuming that supporting the lunches is not a money maker for the senior center, is that correct? I think you charge $5.
It breaks even.
It breaks even.
The food costs related to
Is it
what we
4?
charge.
Oh, I don't know why I thought it was.
Yeah, the food
Okay.
cost related to what we charge is usually a break even.
Okay.
No, that's just
That's not staffing.
purchasing
yeah.
food. So not the preparation of the food, not the utilities or anything else to run the center, it's just the purchase of the food.
Right. And then when there are suggestions, like obviously any patron of any place that you go, that you care about, that you're invested in, you certainly have ideas, you have suggestions, you have things that you would like to see or like to participate in. What is the process, or what should be the process for going from, hey, it might be cool if, the discussion around the table, to actual either implementation or this can't happen and here's why? response that comes back?
So I would offer to you that there are several ways. I know that the Senior Services Advisory Board often makes suggestions, and those are gleaned from watching videos or reading their minutes. The seniors themselves have the ability to drop suggestions in the suggestion box. As of late, there have been almost none. What I can offer to you is that we do, and I'm willing to share this document with everyone, that of the, I would say, 2 pages of suggestions that we have received over the last couple of years, there are an attempt made, if, like a fall craft, 8 people attended. There are some times when we offer something, and because people don't sign up, like, we can't physically offer flu shots, we can't have a pharmacist come out for 2 or 3 people. I used to get my flu shots and my pneumonia shots regularly here at the senior center, and just as of late, I think people are getting them at their physician's office or their pharmacy, which makes more sense. If it makes more sense to them, then that's great. They should be doing what makes sense for them and their health. So we do try to implement those things. What I think we probably don't do a great job is communicating back why something has not been held. Unless there are people currently signed up for a program and we can't hold it because we haven't met that threshold, we're notifying those people that something has been, is not going to take place because there weren't enough people signed up. But I can offer that, hot chocolate bar. No, I've not communicated why we have or have not done that.
So like, at the planning commission, for example, as the representative from the Board of Trustees, I give a Board of Trustees report, here's what happened at the Board of Trustees, blah, 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 blah. At the same time, when there are issues, they will say, hey, this is something that we'd like to, assigns was a recent thing, could you bring this up to the Board of Trustees? This is something that as a group we feel is important. Is there that same kind of back and forth liaison type situation that occurs at the senior center or senior services advisory committee meetings that is an up and down, a back and forth type?
I think there
flow
is now
of-
that
of
Becca is
information?
there for them. Yes, I
Okay.
do think that will be
But also Sherry has brought us concerns from the committee.
correct.
I don't know how much
I
you're
don't want to
telling
downplay
them.
that, I'm just, as far as the staff person, she was speaking to the staff
Right.
person, so I'm
Yeah,
sorry.
like-
I was
like
speaking
Miles
to
does
the
the same
staff
thing,
role.
yeah.
So, yes, staff role and, of course, a liaison from the board.
Yeah, I mean, you've definitely brought us all sorts of thoughts from them. I don't know how much you're taking back to them.
As much as I ever know. But it's like, sometimes I don't know what the plans are. Like, are we still considering the one-room addition? Is that,
That was never brought to us,
that was
that I
not brought
understood.
here yet? Okay.
Whose idea is that?
Whose idea was that?
The whole committee.
And who paid for that?
Judy?
There was nothing ever brought to a board.
The building, the one-room, small addition with and without the basement, I didn't bring that, I'm sorry. The financials for that, did you just get a bid that was,
We did
you get a quote for free?
get a quote for just an addition, not the expansion, but
Right.
just an addition.
Addition room and a basement with and without the basement.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you didn't bring that to the board yet, though, right? So we gotta do that. That's
Well, I
a
mean, I
future.
think this is a great idea. Committees should not be seeking quotes. That's a staff function. Because
was
none of
free.
the committee members can speak on behalf of the township. Just like you or I
Right,
should
well,
be getting
she,
quotes.
she got it free.
It's not about cost, it's about authority. None of us speak alone as, on behalf of the township. The only one who's been empowered to do that is the superintendent. So that's a place where I think there's some, misunderstanding.
It's not a quote, it's just a cost projection, just like we brought you for the expansion. The question is, how much would that cost? So we were asked, how much would that cost? The expansion, we went out and got a builder to go and talk to local contractors about what that would cost. You turned that down. Again, one of our goals in our strategic plan is to, which you agreed to, is to provide to advise the trustees on expansion. The expansion at $500,000 was rejected, not put in the budget. And so we then, after the budget was done, what did we do? We looked at an addition where the porch is? And what would that cost? We have not brought that to you, but in order to answer that question, we do know from a local contractor who has gotten prices from individual tradesmen, what it would cost to just put a room where the porch is right now, with or without a basement. Because we need space.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, Judy. It is also not incumbent upon the committees to be doing that.
We are advising you. That's our role.
Advising us is your role, but asking for bids or quotes or seeking expertise from vendors is not appropriate for any committee.
We didn't do that.
I thought you just said you did.
We had someone do it for us.
Someone on township staff?
No, just a local builder. What would it cost to take what we have and
So I
put
did
an
it free of
addition right
charge?
there? With a basement or without a basement?
Yeah, I mean, that stuff has to go through the staff. I mean, there's some legal
Well, we're
issues
just
with
at
that, is there
point right
not?
now, when we brought you in and asked you, how can we best advise you? We're still waiting for information on that.
That's what tonight is, Judy.
Yeah.
I'm saying that it is inappropriate legally for committees to seek bids, consults, whatever you want to call it, a bid, a consult, a quote, talk with somebody on behalf of the township, because none of you speak on behalf of the township, just like none of us do. Let me ask our legal counsel to weigh in on that.
Yeah, related to actually like seeking quotes or bids on behalf of the township, even if it was so much as reaching out to a local builder and saying, I want to get this quote for the township, that should be and that is the responsibility of township staff and not of individual committee members. So I think that that would be the best practice.
And the same is true for us, right? It's not our role to seek bids and quotes for folks, for things.
That's right.
So I'm not picking on the committee, I'm saying it's also, there's people who have been empowered to do that. And it protects us legally to have them. The staff. Karen on behalf of the staff and then the staff leadership.
Well, until last month, we didn't even have a staff person assigned to us to take it to the administration. Last month, we were told that Becca has been assigned to us and she could bring that information to the.
That's fair, Judy, but that does not mean in the absence of a staff member assigned that the committee should go and do those things.
So if they did have interest in doing something like getting bids, for example.
Yeah.
The process they should go through is to discuss it at their advisory committee and relay that to Becca?
Well, what I think is frustrating from the committee's point of view is there's like a chicken and egg thing here, right? Does the committee spend their time and effort coming up with a plan that this board has no interest in supporting? I would be frustrated if I was a committee that said, we've put in, 6 months of work on an expansion, and they come to us and we're like, we didn't ask for this, we're not interested. So there is this what comes first? Do committees come to us first and say, hey, are you all interested in this? And then we say yes or no. We've done that a little bit with the planning commission more of late under John's leadership. But I do think on behalf of the committees, that is a frustrating point.
I don't know that you answered my question.
In all fairness, I would come to this board if I was brought a recommendation by any committee, and I would ask this board, are you interested in me seeking information on this project? Because if you're not going to fund it or believe that you have no interest in pursuing that project, I would be asking you all for your decision on that as well.
I think that has been unclear fairly to the committees.
So
May I say
how
something?
would we clear
Not at this
that?
point.
How would we clear that up then?
That's what we're doing.
I mean, the committees have the ability to do that. If I was a committee member, I'd hesitate to get too far outside of the board, because who wants to waste their time?
Right.
So
no,
where it has
exactly.
worked on these last couple of times is from the planning commission. I think that's a good model, where a member, John or you, has come and said, hey, is there interest in this? Should we spend time on this? Because if the answer is no, then they could shift their attention. But that's not to say they couldn't do that.
So that is that liaison role then of the person who goes to both of those types of meetings is then responsible for, I guess, initiating that first part of the conversation to see if there is any interest before.
Or the
You would be-
chair to the
Okay.
board, yeah. I'm sorry, Jack, you had your hand up.
No, you kind of spoke exactly what I was gonna say, use the planning commission as an example. The planning commission does it all the time. We've had many conversations about it, and the chair is here, and he's often said, let us know if you're interested in this as a board, because we don't really want to waste our time with it if you're not going to pursue it. So I think that's a very important part.
Yeah.
And then if the planning commission hears back that there is no interest, they
They
don't
don't
work
pursue
on
it,
it.
correct.
Or wait however long and bring it up again down the road.
Right. In some ways, could wait to another election for a different group of people, or could wait till another time. Also, when the ARPA money came in, suddenly our ability to fund some of these projects related to safety and activity like that changed overnight. I don't know that we'll ever get 1.3 million to do that again. I can hope, but I doubt that that's the case. All right, other thoughts from folks? What I'm hoping that we end with today is sort of what Sherry had indicated, some sort of direction for what the activities look like, what we're looking for from the Senior Services Advisory Board, and some direction to them, which is what they've requested from us.
The only thing I have is, I don't think Ms. Gardy had an opportunity to get back with me on this yet. I sent her a follow-up email to the Senior Center Services report that she sent.
Excuse me, we're having a little trouble hearing you.
Okay. I'll put this down. I get a lot of feedback from this sometimes, so I like to stay away from it. I was gonna say, I'll just start again. I don't think Ms. Gardy had an opportunity to respond to my email to her. But I did send her an email regarding the senior services report to Bath Township trustees. And I'll just read it, and I'll hit the highlights on this. Judy, thank you so much for the 2024 Senior Services Report to Bath Township Board of Trustees. It was very informative. Would you please and would be willing to send me, and these are some of the things that we talked about. For example, she listed there's a list of 80 different activities that the seniors have identified they want to have. Well, it might be appropriate that they parse those down to bring to the board if there's something. The names of area agencies that attended your outreach luncheon and what services they offered. Apparently, I didn't know this took place. I don't have to know it did, but they had an outreach luncheon for other area agencies to say what services they offer. And you can have a copy of this if you wish, Ryan. And lastly, I'm interested in every senior center in the region, that's a quote, that you visited, with a couple of examples of the valuable lessons you learned that led to the conclusion, we have the best senior center in the region. And why that's important is if you did learn valuable lessons that we could look at to help promote other things, we should have been able to have that and to know that. These are the types of things that I think are important to talk and discuss as an advisory committee, and then bring the final result of, well, this is the conclusion we came to, that we've kind of reached consensus on, that we should bring to the board and say, now, this is something we're looking at, we kind of all agree on it, or the majority of them agree on it, shall we move forward on this or not? And a lot of things can come into play, as you well know, not the least of which is financial obligations that we're looking at this upcoming year. But those are the types of things I think are important.
Sorry, Jack, I didn't get your email. I apologize.
Okay.
Thanks for that, Jack. Karen, Judy mentioned something earlier, and she's mentioned it a couple of times, and it always, I always have this question I forget to ask. There's a strategic plan for the Senior Services Advisory Board, and that's come before this board or a prior board? Go ahead, Karen.
It's my understanding that the Senior Services Advisory Board strategic plan has come before this board, and that maybe not you as the current makeup of this
Right.
board, but a previous makeup of a board had accepted that plan on file.
Are you meaning received it or approved the activities in it?
In my estimation, when things come from other groups like that, it is received.
Okay. I don't know, has everyone seen that strategic plan?
Yeah, I seen it.
You have it? Kate,
I don't have it, I've seen it.
So that's probably something we should get another copy of, Karen.
We can do that. It would be my desire to understand, I think that there have been, many assertions tonight that the seating at the senior center is full, which I don't agree with. And I think that numbers from staff telling me how many meals were served and how many meals were given to go, I would like to bring that data, but I would also like to understand any other data that you would like to see, in regards to the senior center, so that I can bring forth that information for your consideration as well.
I don't need to see any other data, because we're not talking about expansion at the center right now. But I know you at one point had said you had some plans for solving some problems over there as sort of our chief facilities person. Have you had a chance to talk about them tonight?
My addressing the, potentially reworking the kitchen area with a walk-in a walk-in refrigerator and then a walk-in freezer, and retooling how to-goes work organizationally would be one of my top recommendations. Our to-goes sometimes are half the amount of the meals that are served in the center. And so I think that there has been complaints over time about, do the people in the center get served first? Do the to-goes get served first? In an era of COVID, I was trying to serve the to-goes and get those people out the door, so we're not languishing in the building. That has been met, either way I do it, it's been met with criticism. Whether people in the senior center get served first or to-goes get served first, somebody doesn't want to wait, so.
Sure.
But those would be my major areas of improvement that I would like to work on in the coming year.
Do you have what you need from us to implement those? Are there places where the Senior Services Advisory Board could advise you on that activity?
That idea has been generated just by working with staff and looking at the numbers of to-goes as they increase over time. So if there is an appetite by this board for that work to be pursued, then our staff would certainly work to put together numbers on that to bring before the board. There is approximately $37,000. I haven't seen the most recent audit numbers. Our audit has been conducted and is being prepared for presentation to this board. But certainly those dollars that have been fundraised could be used in support of that.
You sort of like kick that football to us. I'm gonna kick it back to you. Is it your recommendation as our lead staffer that we should consider doing those
Yes,
things
it would
in
be.
the short term?
Yes, it would be.
Okay. Go ahead, Jack.
We've talked about this before, and again, it comes as, we often receive criticism that we're really not supportive of the senior center. I've asked you this in public meetings before, and I'll ask you again, because I think it's important for people at home to know this, to kind of offset some of those allegations. How much in the budget this year do we pay to keep the senior center running?
So in addition to the money that is brought in by senior center meals, which is approximately $30,000, the general fund will support the senior center with $155,368.
Thank you. I have difficulty understanding some accusations that we really don't care about seniors and we're not interested in helping them and we won't listen to them, and many of the other criticisms when we're spending close to $160,000 plus the $30,000 you have to support this program. So I have a lot of difficulty understanding that.
Is there in that budget this year, did you build in the costs for your recommendations about the change in activity and the physical enhancement needed to do meals differently?
I did not. That is a revenue source that sits separately in that fund, and it has been designated for the expansion of the center. I would consider both a walk-in freezer and a walk-in refrigerator an expansion of the center to help it operate more efficiently and effectively. So I would just offer that there's almost $40,000 sitting there that has been fundraised for that specific purpose.
Okay. So if you were to bring a recommendation to us, the funding source you think is the senior services fund balance?
No, it's the senior center special revenue. It's a fund balance
It
that
is a fund
exists in that fund.
The enterprise fund?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. How do
I'm not
folks-
sure that would cover the entirety of the project, but that would be a good start.
Is it
Okay.
approved yet, that freezer, walk-in?
No,
Fridge, no, okay.
no, I'm here saying that that is,
Right.
would be my
No,
recommendation.
because that would need to come to
Yeah,
us,
yeah.
especially because it's not in the budget. If she had
Right.
put it in the
Yeah,
budget, then
okay.
maybe.
That's what I thought, but I just wanted to double check.
Al?
Yesterday, or Saturday, I was at the garbage pickup, or whatever you wanna call it, the township. So I had time to have a cup of coffee with the girls in the kitchen. And I asked them, what is your biggest need for the kitchen? And they said they need the freezer and the refrigerator put outdoors, so they could take where that stuff is at and move stuff around and give themselves more room. That would be the first thing they would be interested in.
Yeah, I think it's imperative for everyone to understand that we have 3 kitchen staff. We have 2 cooks and a dishwasher. And the staff that shops for the meals for the week does not have the current capacity to shop for all of the fresh and I would mostly note fresh items that they need to make the meals for 3 days a week. So they're shopping multiple times a week, which unfortunately is not a good use of their time. If they were to be able to go out one time a week and shop for all 3 of those days, or potentially even more of the days the following week, it would be more efficient use of their time, and then they would have everything they would need to prepare the meals for the week.
Can we go ahead with this part of it?
Excuse me. Well, it sounds like unless there's some dissension on the board, that there is some interest in receiving a proposal around that. This does seem, at least to me, that a place where the Senior Services Advisory Board could weigh in. Again, to make it clear, not veto this or not demand things, but give you feedback to say, you know, here's our dream, here's what we think, we love this part of it, maybe change this part of it before it gets to this level. Are you comfortable with that?
I am.
Are you all comfortable with that?
I think Becca
That seems like a
recommended
good,
that she talked to people and recommended that that was in the
It
most
sounds,
immediate.
it sounds like
most
Becca's doing
immediate
a needs assessment of the kitchen, but
Yeah.
I think we will completely figure out that that is something that has been mentioned to board members and is something that is indeed required.
Karen, do you think that if we had greater freezer and fridge capacity, we could think about doing something creative like multiple seatings of lunch per day, like a seating at 11 and a seating at 1 as a way of serving more people?
I don't, and I don't because those people that are currently working are cooking 100 and some meals a day. If you're asking, could you divide that up and have 50 at a seating and 50 at a seating, that's not a fair question because you don't know how many to-goes you're gonna have overall. If you have, like I said with meatloaf, you had 118 meals served, but you had almost 50 taken from the building. So I don't think it warrants multiple seatings because you have 60 people, 60 or 65 people sitting in the room.
So you're saying there is space for more people to sit at the current seating?
The current capacity of the building is 85 people. I always, like I said, remove 5 staff, and so there's 80 places to sit. We are not at this time reaching that capacity. We're some days are hedging 60 to 70 people, but based on the numbers that are provided by staff, we're not running out of seats.
Okay, I misunderstood that. Thank you for that clarification. Go ahead, Al.
We used to have to take the card tables
Hold
down.
on, folks.
And put tables up and chairs around them, so that we had our 10 tables. You only have 8, and that makes a big difference. And they're supposed to be 8.
Hearing us all discuss this and talking about sort of going back to the original thoughts of the forefathers, if you will, about why this committee was created, it does feel, at least to me, like if they're not dealing with the facility, they're not managing staff, is there enough for them to do? Do we need to generate more to do? Do we need to think about a different structure? What I don't want to do is waste folks who have raised their hand to volunteer for seniors' time. I think that's not a good place for us to be. What, as a staff member, what's your recommendation? Is there enough for them to actually do that's outside of the things that we've just said are not appropriate for them?
I can't answer that question because I think in looking at the information about how their work should be considered. I don't know if we walked through that exercise, if we would develop additional things that they could assist on and make recommendations on. At one time, in the past, I had recommended that I had wanted the senior center to be placed under the recreation, committee. And at that time, that, idea was rejected by the board. And I would like to revisit that, but I also think it's important for us to walk through the exercise of considering what committees should be doing. So if that's the recreation committee, which also contains the farmer's market, it could contain the senior center. I think that we should be walking through that exercise with them. But without doing that exercise, I don't know that you could. I would offer you that the combination of the farmer's market and the recreation programs has been successful as it's been combined. And I do think that in other communities where I've looked, the senior center often falls under the recreation department. I think it could easily fall under the recreation department and recreation committee here.
So are you thinking we would expand the current rec committee, which includes farmers market, to include senior services?
Yes, I think that could be done. But I still adamantly think we need to walk through the exercise of what they would be charged with.
What this new version would be charged with?
What the current and potentially new, what we'd be charged with.
Yeah, I mean, part of that is I'm hoping that's what we're doing now, is trying to walk through. But what I'm not hearing is a ton of like, this is clearly a place for them to lean into. There is obviously some of those things, but I don't know if it's enough to keep them busy for a year. And I think something that's difficult from their point of view is we don't really have a senior services staff or department. So where some of these other committees have staff and departments, it does sort of limit the capacity for what we could do, right? They can dream up a million things, but if we don't have any capacity to do a million things, again, we're sort of spinning their wheels. Whereas like with rec, we have a department on that. With the police and fire, we have departments on that. Planning commission, we have departments. I mean, does that make sense?
In
Like,
that
there
case,
isn't folks to like say, senior services, go. There's center staff who are running that, but not the bigger piece?
I think in terms of if you were to combine it with recreation, I think you would have to expand recreation in order to provide ample opportunity for the seniors to be represented.
Expand it on the committee or expand the staffing?
Committee.
And in that sense, the rec director or whatever title that person would have would be the person who's lead staffer on senior services too then?
Correct.
And that's Becca,
Which would be Becca.
who's already sort of doing that. Okay, I'm sorry, go ahead, Jack.
That's fine. One of the things I think is important from having sit in your position when I was actually in the office before is to make it clear, or somehow we do this with other committees, that when you do have a conversation about the direction you want to go in, that gets shared by the committee chair with Becca, instead of each individual person on the committee trying to influence Becca to bring their idea. I think it has to be a consensus, and I think then Becca has to bring that forward, instead of each individual committee member. Because I saw that happen over and over and over again when I was working here in the office, that individuals would walk in with their idea, and then a different individual would come in with their idea, and then somebody else would come in with their idea, and it became very, very frustrating for the superintendent at that time to have to deal with that, rather than bringing a consensus through one person, which is how all our other committees and commissions work.
Okay. I hear what you're saying.
And I'm not trying to step in the way of how you organize things, Karen, to me, that makes sense, and hopefully it does for you too.
Yeah, you worked very closely with former Superintendent Waticha, and I know that, I think your advice is spot on in terms of that, being more productive.
Yeah.
Yes, I have the estimate that Judy gave me for the expansion, the 17 by 17 with a.
The addition?
With addition under, the basement under it. And it was 188,000. Now, 188,000, I about lost my teeth. Because you can buy a awful big house for that. And for just a 17 by 17, I can't. Maybe I bought my last house too early.
That was a long time ago, Al.
It just seems like an awful lot of money for a 17 by 17 building.
That's with it.
Yes,
You could,
which is a cement wall with 3 sides.
all right, hold on, folks.
I just wanted to
That's
give you the
helpful, yeah.
prices because you guys hadn't seen this estimate.
You could pave like 6 feet of road with that.
I could get a few more than that.
All right, so I have heard a couple of things in action items. I feel like we're sort of getting to the tail end of this conversation. We're asking the superintendent to redistribute the Senior Services Advisory Board strategic plan to us. We've asked her to develop a recommendation on meal prep, which may include expansion of freezer and fridge space, and to work through the Senior Services Advisory Board on that recommendation. And then perhaps, as the staff feels fit, I don't want to put words in your mouth, Karen, here, but a recommendation on committee structure that might better align to the staffing structure you have recently put into place. Are there other things I missed that sort of have bubbled up as action items here? Do we feel in congruence on those 3?
Yes.
Yes.
How are you feeling? Good. Karen, does that make sense to you?
It does, thank you.
All right, so hopefully this gives the advisory board some direction, at least in the short term. And, hold on, folks, it's hard to hear when you're talking back there. So some ways to engage them, but also some ways for us to look to the future. And then to Sherry's point, I do think having this conversation about more of our committees might make sense in the future. I think it's been probably a real long time since this entity created them, in defining what all of our committees are for. Do we need new committees? Do we need
Clarify.
different committees? I think that makes a lot of sense, you know, in 2024. All right, any last comments on this topic for tonight?
I guess in moving forward, would it make sense to try and include committee reports on our agendas more often?
Yes.
Other than public comment, we don't get to hear very often or reread the minutes, of course. But other than that, we don't get to really hear from a person very often what is going on and what they're talking
How
about.
about our board member that's on that committee, I for this one, and we combine it, bring it to me, and we'll write it down in the meeting, and I'll bring it here.
you with one tonight?
Yeah.
Well,
And
we
we do
have
that
a
just-
section on our traditional agenda for committee reports. My first term, Paula, the supervisor at the time, went through and assigned each committee twice a year to report to us. I thought that worked really well. I brought that up to Karen a couple of months ago as an idea to move back to. If you folks are interested in that, I think that's great. I think they should deserve an audience with us, and we should be able to hear right from them. And that's something the board, whenever I did it for my, whenever the board chair did it for the committees, I was the board member on. We would sort of co-design it, and I would say, like, I think the board likes to hear this, and, you know, we might want to talk more about this, to sort of coach folks on what's helpful for the board to hear. I think that's a good place for the liaison to lean in, but so that the voice is still from the committee.
Yeah.
If you folks are interested in that, Karen and I can redivvy those up. All right, so that'll be item number 4 of action. Thanks, Kate, for that. Any other comments, questions before we move off from this topic? All right, that brings us to the changed item B, which is the public safety millage. In your packet is a memo. Yes, is a memo from the Finance Committee, which consists of myself, Brenda, and Jennifer. We've been meeting several times over the last few weeks. You've heard us tell you about some of the things that we have been working on. We've been learning a lot, learning where we have lots of opportunity to sort of fix some historical challenges that we have had. In the memo, you can see some of those. in the bulleted list. I'll give you just an example. This is my 10th year serving as a board member. I had a gap in the middle. But what I had always been told by the staff and by board members in my first term, and then getting into this term as well, was we have a great fund balance. So fund balance is great, it's the strongest in the region. Well, we invited our accounting firm to dispatch their consultant to us, and their consultant is a former township manager of DeWitt, is that right, Karen? So like someone who knows how to do this stuff, and he sort of dropped a bomb on the four of us when he said we are actually the lowest fund balance in the region, and that he would encourage us to increase the fund balance. So this was, it seems like a small thing to say, but it was a paradigm shift for us, going into the meeting thinking we have one of the strongest fund balances and finding out it is not one of the strongest fund balances. I think he literally said we were the smallest at, I think, 107, 109%. So those are the types of things we've sort of been uncovering in our work together. This includes the fire department equipment we've been talking about. We have about $13.5 million in unfunded pension liability. So you've heard us talk to you about the pension. We've sort of done a patch for this year, but that is a burning issue that we're going to have to tackle. We obviously have expanded staffing in requests from residents for services. We have not planned adequately for the deterioration of our infrastructure. For instance, if a roof went bad or something devastating happened, we don't have money set aside for those specific things. We just have not prepared for this level of finance for a long time. And some of our pension items were formed like in 1986 or something, and we're incredibly generous to the staff, which I think is great and where I would sort of default to, but that has grown in expense both to the township and to the staff members to the point where we probably cannot continue that. So there's a whole bunch more limitation, at least in my mind, than I went into this conversation around our finance. Would you two agree to that? I don't want to put words in your mouth.
Nope.
There's just like more to wrap our head around in a very short amount of time. So the first piece of this is sort of forced upon us by time. I wouldn't say that we would have brought this to you if the timing was different. Again, you two can disagree with me on any of this. It would be nice for us to sort of bring you multiple options of multiple revenue sources and perhaps expenditure cuts to look at this holistically. That is how I would approach this sort of in my day job. But because we are in a year where we currently do not have a police and fire millage levied, we have only a few times when we can ask the voters to consider that levy and it work in arrears to cover 2024. If we don't pass this in 2024, we will not have a millage in 2024. The millage has run out in 2023. So you can see the timing of that is really critical because it brings in about $1.5 million, no small amount. So we've got to solve that issue, or at least attempt to take a whack at that issue in the short term. What we would have liked to have done is say, let's take another 2-year stint at the current rate until we can figure all of this out. But for those of you who were on this board or around 2 years ago, that was exactly the same thing we said 2 years ago. We'll study things, we'll put together some revenue sources so that we can talk about what to do with the police and fire millage in 2024. Here we are, and we have not had that conversation in its entirety. So it's the recommendation of the the recommendation of the Finance Committee to consider asking the voters for a 1 mil increase in the public safety millage, which is formerly known as police and fire, now that we have changed the name of the fund, from 3 to 4 mils in the public safety millage, and instead of going over 2 years, go over 5 years. So we'll be asking the voters fewer times for money. We won't be able to increase it for 5 years unless we go for an additional increase. So it gives some stability to the citizens and the taxpayers to know what's coming at them. It also moves it off this volatile election season, and I don't mean that volatile for us, although it certainly has been sometimes in the past, but state elections and federal elections, it would be awful if our police and fire millage, our public safety millage got caught up in some national or statewide politics and our residents were harmed by that. So moving it outside of that every 2 years, which also would include then the presidential election, so for longer. A very bit larger increase over a longer period of time. The numbers, and these are loose, but I'm confident in using them with you. The 1 mil brings in about $500,000, both in our charter millage and in the police and fire millage, which makes sense, because they should be the same. So what we really need, if you look at the numbers, we're feeding into the police and fire, the public safety fund, anywhere from $650,000 upwards of more than $1 million annually from the general fund into the public safety fund, because it is underfunded by the millage. So the idea is we could cover that with an increase to the millage and be able to use the funds that are sitting in the general fund for other things that we need to do. Like roads, or any of the other things. The other context here is in the current budget, we've budgeted over $1.6 million to be pulled out of the fund balance. So if you picture it in your head, we're budgeting to pull $1.6 million out of the fund balance to put into the general fund to transfer $750,000 of that to the public safety fund. So it's a large piece that we're transferring from the general fund to the public safety fund. And in this case, in our current budget, it's not even money we have revenue for. We're pulling it out of the piggy bank. So eventually, that piggy bank's gonna be empty. Also thinking through the lens, they're already telling us the piggy bank is too small. So it's like a double, triple whammy everywhere you look. So the finance committee is recommending 4 mils. If you go up to 4.5 or 5 mils, which would actually perhaps solve the gap that we have in its entirety, it's a big increase. And we were uncomfortable going with that big of an increase all at one time. I think this would help us sort of stabilize where we're at and determine what we do for next steps, especially as we look at pension changes and some of the other perhaps expense reductions that we can do. So it would be a mix of revenue enhancement and expense reductions, and to see where that gets us in the shorter term. So that was a lot of information, but there was a lot of meetings, hours and hours. Like I said, we've learned a ton. Happy to take your questions. Again, Brenda and Jen are on that committee. Karen is ex officio, so she's been at all those meetings. We're happy to answer those questions. Ultimately, the question is, do we pass this resolution, which would put the question to the voters? This is not us increasing the millage. We don't have that authority. The voters do. We would put that on the August ballot.
What happens if it's turned down by the voters?
So if it's turned down by the voters, we can ask again in November, either for the same millage, we could restructure the millage, or we could go back to the 3 mills over 2 years structure that has been approved by about 70 to 75% of voters every 2 years.
If the vote get turned down, you better keep the pumper by the barn.
Yeah.
Okay.
Part of the strategy, Sherry, in running it in August is in case the voters decide we don't want to do this, again, if we don't ask them again at the next election, we don't have a millage for 2024.
Right.
What is the breakdown, like, per $100,000 of tax value, this is what your dollar increase would be
That's in there
for
somewhere, but
taxpayer?
I forgot what it was.
Our assessor is in the audience just for that purpose.
Yeah, see, I thought
She's
Beth had
desperately
that in
waiting
here.
for us to call her up back there.
I don't know if that's the answer that I want to say, but can you repeat your question? Since I was
So,
gonna-
like, when you read this language on the ballot, it says, you know, for $100,000 of taxable value or whatever, it would be a this dollar increase per mill or
So-
for this
$4.
amount.
For every thousand.
For every thousand,
So
whatever.
every thousand
Okay.
would be $4.
Okay, thank you.
I
And
don't-
that's based on what number on your
Your taxable value.
taxable value? Okay.
I would offer to you and to anybody at home that has access to the packet online that there, on the second page of the resolution, there is a public safety protection millage increase, and it outlines that exact language, $4 per 1,000 of taxable value. And it's kind of it is the language that would appear on the ballot if it were to be approved by this board.
Oh, I see it. Okay, thank you.
And so currently we're at 3, so it'd be $1 more per thousand.
Now,
If I could just briefly explain, because I know we've been talking about some of the language and this being an increase from 3 mills to 4 mills. The way that our office has prepared this and the way that it would be presented to the voters and the way anyone reading it would see it is that it is an increase to 4 mills, not based off of 3 mills. Now, the board has the option, if it thinks that renewing to 3 mills and then seeking a 1 mill increase, it could be presented as 2 questions on the ballot. But there are different ways that it can be structured. So I just don't want you guys to think that the way it will come out is that you're just seeking a renewal and then also an increase. This would be read as just an increase.
Thanks for that clarification. The committee decided that it was best to ask for what we think we need the first time, and if voters reject that, to think perhaps of a different way to structure it. Go ahead, Al.
We're still gonna be $1 million short.
Yeah, ish, depending on the
Yes,
year,
it's
depending
very close.
on some of these other factors, yes.
We've got more money coming in as taxable value from the township with new building that has come in the township, but still, these figures add up to about $1 million. We're gonna be short.
Yeah, so if you look at just
Gonna come out
fiscal
of
year '23, which is last year, not our current budget, we transferred from general fund $750,000. And we had almost that exact same amount less from our millage to cover the public safety entities. So it's almost a 1-to-1. I don't want to say that because it's not like $1 here went to this exactly. We have other things in the budget that it went to, but if you look at it in raw numbers, it's about $750,000, which would be 1.5 mills in the current structure. So if we theoretically went to 4.5, we would cover that 750,000. But that is not what we're asking. We're asking just for 4. So there still would be some backfill from the general fund.
Plus, you're not counting the fire trucks that we need.
Fire trucks aren't even in here, no. We need to go much higher.
Well, if you went one more mill higher, in the 2 years it's gonna take to get it, you've almost got it paid for, the one.
Yeah. Yeah. There's lots to consider here. Another option that we are not proposing to you right now, but we may try to figure out how we might want to do this, is our charter millage. The Headley rollback has rolled that back from 5 mills to 3.7? 3.5. So we're about 1.5 mills back from where that was actually set because we've never reset it. Other communities reset it every 2 years. Or every amount of time. We've not reset that. We also have never increased this millage. So I think, again, if I can speak on behalf of Brenda and Jen, it felt a lot like we were trying to fix decisions that had been made by people decades before us. We probably should have been looking at keeping these up along over time, and then it wouldn't feel like such a rug ripped up from underneath citizens. It would have been something that they had come to be able to prepare for and understand. So that's part of why you're seeing only an increase of 1 mill is our recommendation. We're not voting on this tonight. This is for your consideration. I'd encourage you to think about it and talk to people in the community, ask questions. We will talk about this again next week at the May 6th meeting. To be clear, we as a board have the ability to do anything. What we are presenting to you is a recommendation. If you think it should be 4.5 or 5, we could vote on that. If you think we should keep it the way it is, we could vote on that. So don't feel encumbered by this, but this is sort of our best thinking at the moment. And then hopefully over the course of the next 6 to 12 months, we'll be dealing with some of these other issues. We know we have to deal with the pension issue before the end of the year. We have to deal with that. And that's gonna be a tough one.
Are these maps supporting documents for
The
this?
assessor department
I don't know.
knows.
Well, with our intern staff, we went through and we pulled out some data information, pulling mostly charter townships. But what we were looking for was townships that are our size. And so then we did a little rendering for that. And so it was looking at to see what other places had for their public safety, or police and fire, because we found that some people split those up differently. We looked at the taxable value, we looked at population, And then we looked at their overall total. So the maps that you have in conclusion here were, why don't I have them actually?
You don't mind?
I have them.
Okay.
I was kind of prepared, I just didn't have the right flip here. So as we looked at these, this was the public safety millage, this one here. So this is gonna say where we sit with other municipalities in our area, as well as other townships that are similar sizes throughout the state of Michigan. And if you look on here, we were kind of mid-range to on the lower end of that. Then we had, this was taxable value, which was here. And the reason why we pulled it in with other taxable values is we were trying to pull in other people in our area. And what, if somebody is moving from one municipality to another municipality, what they would be expecting in our general area. And then the other one went just based off of population. Just to kind of break it down so you saw where everything was coming from. And then we had conclusions from there. So, and all of that information was pulled off of the state's website, off of each municipality's L4029, which is what people pull their millage from. So.
So that spreadsheet, you can see sort of the context is what that's being provided for. And I think it's just really interesting. There's solid waste millages, EMS, library, parks, airport, roads, several of them have roads. Unfortunately, as we think about how we want to do some of the things we want to do in the township, these are the types of things we're going to have to discuss. Excuse me. Thank you, Beth. Other questions?
Can I make a comment, please?
Yeah.
I would offer, I'm looking at the previous year's budget and just trying to find, I think that staff and I will put together a page where the public can find this information. I think that would be helpful for residents to understand this information. Once it's approved, the township can only speak to factual information and distribute factual information. So once this is approved by the board and it is approved to be on the ballot in August, the township can in no way, shape, or form sway voters to vote for or against it. It's only factual information, education that we can offer to the public. So in no way can we sway anybody's vote. I would offer to anyone that's interested, I have to see what page this is on. Last year, it looks like on page 22 of my budget, it offers the public safety department, and it shows the police and fire taxes that are raised. The amount that we would be raising would be coming into the budget, and you would see that amount in that line. These dollars can in no way, shape, or form be used for anything other than public safety, police and fire protection. So if there are, is anybody out there saying these monies can be used for anything else? They can't. Matter of fact, the resolution that's in your packet very specifically states, I'm just trying to find the right, $4 per 1,000 of taxable value levied for 5 years for the purpose of operating, equipping, purchasing public safety protection services through the Bath Charter Township Police and Bath Charter Township Fire Department, and then it indicates how much money would be raised. So those are the reasons, those are the uses that the money can be used for.
But to be clear, this money doesn't exist yet.
No, it does not.
We don't
but
have a millage
I
where we're
just want to
collecting
indicate to
that,
people
so-
that there may be, false information out there that we're
Yeah.
going to use this for something else. Legally,
We can't use that money
we can't.
legally for anything else.
No.
Also, the money doesn't exist.
Also, the money doesn't exist. Correct.
That's a good clarification, thank you. I know there was an MTA page in the magazine last month about what board members can do as part of millage campaigns. I'll print that out and bring that for us next week as well. We where we are not operating as the township, have other options where we can tell people we think they should vote yes or no, but not on behalf of the township, not on behalf of the board, not on behalf of the staff. We're very limited in that.
Why was this not renewed before now? Was there an actual decision, or did it just not get brought up?
They were always scared that they weren't gonna get the 3 mills, and so they figured that it was safer to go this way, because we did have money.
Okay.
Taxes are collected in arrears. So
Right.
always in the year, you're
Okay, so we're
approving
not
the
really
millage
behind then.
for.
Right.
We are, but we're not, okay.
No, I mean, in a real sense, if we don't vote yes on this, that 1.6 million turns to a zero. We're not behind.
In terms of proposing
We,
it.
this is the way we've done it structurally for probably ever, and it seems to work. But we could have run this in, what, May or February?
It's August and November.
You can't run it in August, or in May or
I do
February?
not believe so.
Oh, all right.
You can, but then it is subject to heavily rollback in the year that it's enacted, if it's, I think it's before May 5th?
May
Oh,
5th.
So pushing it back protects it from Headley?
That's right.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah, and that's the general practice, is that you have it in the August election and then have an opportunity to.
So
put it
depending
back
on the
on.
economics, you could be starting behind where you intended
That's
already.
right. Yeah.
That's a better answer than I have for you. Other questions? Is that a hand up, Al?
No,
Okay.
I'm just looking at my paperwork.
The key piece that I think I will be saying to my neighbors and colleagues across the community is this is a proposal to the voters. The voters get to decide. We get to decide what we ask them for, but ultimately, they still get to weigh in on that. And if folks want to give us feedback on that, they can come to the May 6th meeting and talk to us before we put that into place. Any last discussions, questions? We ready to move on? All right, so now we're under 6, new business, large B, items for action. We have an item here for the Senior Services Advisory Board. I asked the superintendent to include this in case there were action items that came from our discussion. I did not hear any action items elevated from any of you, so I don't think we need that, but if you disagree with that, feel free to shout that out now. All right, we've got 4 action steps that don't require board action that we're gonna move forward with. That brings us to new little b, which is Kessler and Drive project. I'll turn it over to the superintendent to walk us through that.
Thank you. The assessor is here as well and is familiar with the project in case there are any questions that I can't answer for you. You have a letter in your packet from early April of 2024, and it is from Mr. Kessler, who has a project that is in front of, or will be very soon in front of the Planning Commission for a development off of Gary Lane. He is asking for the board's permission to install, a new sewer lead off an existing manhole in the right-of-way of Gary Lane. He is asking this now because Gary Lane, as you know, will be undergoing some mill and fill asphalt work in coming weeks. I believe it'll be starting later this week. And this request comes at the request of Mr. Kessler in preparation of his development. It comes at his own expense, and in no way, shape, or form does this guarantee that his project will be approved. He will still have to work through the proper channels and the process at the Planning Commission to execute the sewer system portion of that project, which will require him to work with our township engineers. It will require him to work with our sewer authority, and it will require him to put in a Part 41 permit request with Eagle in the state of Michigan. So in no way, shape, or form is this a guarantee that his project will go through. He is asking to install this in preparation of that project so that he does not have to cut into our new asphalted road. And I appreciate that he doesn't want to damage anything that has just been repaired. So if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them. Beth is also available if you have questions that I can't answer for you.
If he ended up doing this down the line in the normal sequence of things, he would still have to repair the road though, right?
Correct, he would have to repair the road. If the project doesn't go through, this is capped when it's put in, it will remain capped, and that it will just hang out there as a lead off a manhole
So
for the
it's
sewer system.
meant to be protecting the road, but also a cost savings for Kessler.
Correct.
I'm confused about the 40 units. Is that the piece that's gonna have the private drive?
I think that's where I can't answer, I'm not familiar with the entire development. If you have information.
Yeah, there's two parts of development getting ready to move forward. There is private drive and drive that will be coming before the planning commission to expand that private drive, and the homeowners association with maintaining that, creating several lots down a dead-end version of the first and drive dead end. Why we have two dead ends, I'm not sure, but this would actually just be coming off of Gary Lane, and it would be 40 sites enclosed within that area. It's what's been proposed, but they're still working. That's the early stages of that.
But the 40 units would be off the public road?
It would be off of Gary Lane, yes. And it would be
Not
all
building the private drive back there?
That's a separate part. That would have 4 parcels off the private drive and drive. This is 40 units off of the Gary Lane. But
Got
this
it.
still would be private drives.
Wait, the 40 is?
Yeah, it's still private drives within that area.
I thought
The
our
homeowners
ordinance we
association.
passed said you couldn't do that anymore.
This is gonna be site condos, and so it would not be, so that's a little bit different. It's not gonna be, Miles should have been here. So it's a different ordinance of what they're running things through.
So
So
we're
what
allowing
you-
them to
what you-
build a private road for 40 units?
No, it's a,
Is this gonna be a PUD, planned unit?
no, it's not gonna be a planned unit development. It's gonna be a site condo. And so.
But our ordinance still didn't allow you to build a private road for what, more than 8 parcels?
That's.
12, I think.
12?
So we're
Thank you.
talking about
12.
2 different ordinances. The new private drive ordinance allowed that, but this would be site condos. So it's a different ordinance. So it's like how Hilltop is developed, or some of the other developments, Villas of Walnut Grove are underneath this ordinance. So it's a different ordinance than the private drives that was just approved by the planning commission.
So it's a different type of private drive?
It's a different type of
But different type of development.
Okay.
It's still gonna have it has different standards within that ordinance that they're using. The language.
I would like Miles to come and talk to us about this.
I mean, so what today is
No,
just-
I understand the
okay.
difference,
Okay,
but
he will.
as you know, I voted no on the stupid private drive thing, and now you're
So
telling me
it's
someone's
gonna-
gonna build
it's
more than
gonna
12
move-
houses around a
It
private
would move
drive.
forward, Miles will be able to explain that whole thing as
Great.
it's happening. And, so that's like that's at the beginning, like we just had one pre-app meeting, and it was a pre-app to a pre-app meeting. We didn't even have all the facility people there, because we were talking about several different projects moving forward.
Okay.
So, that's what I'm saying, Miles should have been here, he'd have been your man.
No, and I don't mean to hold up this, but it was a red
Right,
flag
but-
for me.
But it is, we're working through the road commission, we're working through the sewer authority on it, but it's not the new language being used. It's language that we already have in place, that we've used for other developments.
After there was a forbidden use of private drives.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Other questions? All right, you want us to take action on this?
I would
tonight?
like action tonight. The Reith Riley, the construction company that will be milling and filling the road will be getting to work this week. I realize that this helps Mr. Kessler not have to repair the road, but there's no risk to the township at this time of us installing this pipe. It's at his cost, and it is at his risk if this project doesn't eventually get approved. He's put the money in the ground.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's not a good use of resources in the earth to do this twice.
Right. I would agree with that.
Okay. Would someone like to put some action in a motion form?
I'll move that we allow him to go ahead and put that line in.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Questions, thoughts, comments?
It always seems like when they put a new blacktop road in, within a month, they cut it. This is gonna at least cure that
Yeah.
one spot.
Karen, I imagine you and the staff have some sort of ways of monitoring all this stuff to make sure it's within the guidance that you.
I can assure you that even when this came out on the agenda, SCUMA, Prine and Newhoff, and the Road Commission have contacted me. So you have many people looking out on behalf of Bath
Great.
Township to ensure that this is conducted properly.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments? So we have a motion, a second. It sounds like a good place to do a roll call vote.
Ms. Kellerman?
Yes.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes,
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Thank you.
That brings us to the last item on our agenda for discussion and action is the Bath School Museum Grant Letters of Support, Superintendent Hilrich.
Thank you. I would actually defer to Trustee Hagerman if she would like to make any comments at this time. I know that she does represent the museum, but also has been a partner in looking at this project and applying for grants. So if there's anything you would like to go.
Sure. At the last meeting, at the beginning of April, some representatives from the Bath School Museum Committee came and presented the master plan for our building proposal project going forward, and the committee has reached the fundraising stage, which includes applying for grants, and some of the largest grants that we can apply for, especially at the federal level, oftentimes require application through a municipality, meaning that the committee itself would not be eligible to apply. But because of the museum and our partnership with the township and our support from the township, should we approve it, that would allow the township to apply on behalf of the museum for this project that would occur within the municipality. Additionally, for other grants, we have been encouraged to seek letters of support from all interested parties. Thus far, the committee has gone to the County Board of Commissioners and has received a letter of support from them. DeWitt Township, they've gotten support from them. Senator Singh's office, Senator Anthony's office, who doesn't directly represent Bath Township, but she's the chair of the Appropriations Committee. We have plans, I think we're on the agenda for the school board later this month, as well as local committees such as the Lions Club and some others. So it makes sense to ask the Bath Township Board of Trustees for their support in this endeavor as well.
Is it my understanding you've received positive support from the Planning Commission?
Yes, thank you for reminding me. It was just last week. They also presented at the Planning Commission, and the chair as well as the planner indicated support and that they would put together a letter for us.
So I would like to point out, Ms. Hagerman noted it, but if there are opportunities and the township seeks a grant on behalf of this project, that would come before you for your specific approval. Letters of support would be those opportunities where they can apply themselves, and we are just then supporting their efforts to apply for those grant monies.
And I would also mention that the museum applying for a grant would not preclude the township itself from also applying to the same funding source. If you look at the awards, for example, Lansing had more than one, Ingham County had more than one, and looking at some of the recipients over the past couple of years for the federal grants that we were looking at. So the idea that one entity from the municipality applies doesn't mean that, oh, if we take the museum, we can't take the township. I think they take the projects that they feel deserve the best support.
Are you asking us for sort of two things?
I
One is a
think I
letter of
am,
support,
yes.
and one is a willingness to be a fiscal agent, should you need it, or should they
Yes.
need it?
Yes,
Okay.
that is the ask.
So you all can move forward knowing you
Yes.
can rely on us to do those things?
Yes.
Okay. Questions? thoughts, concerns?
Especially since some of these grants have May 1st deadlines, so. Right?
Got 1 day. Yeah, 1 day to submit it.
A lot of these, they give you like a 2-week window from the time that they're announced to the time the application's closed.
Honestly, there was
so-
one that opened up late last week and it was due, I think, tomorrow. So,
Yeah.
sometimes the window is even smaller.
All right, why don't we start with the discussion of a letter of support? Are we as a board willing to put together a letter of support for the project?
Yes.
Yeah, I so move.
Great. Is there a second? Would you, Karen, be the one to author that letter on our behalf then?
I can, yes.
Great. And then we could see it again? I don't know that we need to vote on it, but just for an FYI?
Yes, it would be distributed to you for your,
Great.
edification.
All right, so a motion and a second on writing a letter of support for the project. Is there discussion, concern, anything else to say on that issue? How do you want to handle that?
We can do roll call.
All right.
Okay. Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes.
Ms. Kellerman?
Yes.
Thank you.
So then the second action is a willingness to serve as a fiscal if a municipality must be the fiscal or some other reason that they would need our help.
That means that, I suppose for clarification.
Thank you.
That means that if the grant was awarded, then the money would be given to the township, and the township would be responsible for dispersing it out as described in the grant application.
Do you see any legal concerns with that?
No.
Great. Thoughts about that? Would someone like to put a motion forward?
I'll make that motion that we become the, as you state, the fiscal agent to receive those funds in the event the grant is awarded and disperse them accordingly.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion on that? You want to do the same thing?
Yep. Mr. Rosecrans?
Yes.
Ms. Butler Challenger, yes. Mr. Funes Bliss?
Yes.
Ms. Wilson?
Yes.
Mr. Phillips?
Yes?
Ms. Kellerman?
Yes.
Ms. Hagerman?
Yes.
Great, thank you. You can
Thank you.
tell the committee they have our support. That brings us to the end of our formal agenda tonight. We do have another public statement opportunity. As I mentioned at the beginning of the meeting, this is an opportunity for folks to say anything about any topic. You'll be given 3 minutes to speak and step up to the lectern as you see fit. I see we have our number one person already.
Yes, I'm referring to some of the things that I think I heard some of you say. If I misinterpreted you, please let me know. I do recall Jack said something about, being without a coordinator. I think he said something to the effect, how do we get help? In the past, the coordinator was always the one who, when you walked in there and said, I need help with this or that, she or he would have a list. Or they could call in and say, I need some help with something. For example, last week I called, I said I needed the list of approved assisted care facilities for my aunt. Linda, of course, is the one that answers the phone. She said she doesn't do that. She told me to contact Becca and that Becca would contact, if Becca couldn't do it, she'd contact Taylor. Never heard back from Becca. Whether Becca turned it over to Taylor or not, I don't know, but I never heard from Taylor either. So we've got a problem over there because that is one of the main purposes we have of having the senior center, is having someone there that can help these people when they need help with something. Also, I wanted to mention that several times our senior advisory board members have offered free volunteer help, and we've always been turned down. Now, I do recall, didn't you two do bingo one day?
Oh, we do often, yes.
Okay, so that surprised me, because that's the first time anyone's ever accepted our help. But most of the time, 90% of the time, they turn us down, and I don't know why. Also, it was mentioned about outreach, and one of the big things about outreach is to talk people into coming to the senior center. Well, part of that outreach is being able to say, well, yeah, we have this activity and we have that activity, And we've got a lug nuts game planned, and we've got a Tigers or a Riverwalk Theater, we're gonna go see Our Town. Well, if we don't have these things planned, we've got nothing to tell these people that, yeah, it's a good idea to come to our, we can say, yeah, we've got a meal, but they're looking for more than that. They want the camaraderie. And if the Senior Services Advisory Board was able to help plan some of these activities, then we could have more going on. We'd have more to tell these people when we do our outreach. So I think that's another important thing that I believe you should allow us to do. Allow us to help plan activities and such there. Yeah. And then I did have another, to clarify something, Ryan, what you were talking about, the quotes, that it wasn't our place to get a quote, but an employee. So if Cheryl had gotten the quote, then we'd be okay. Is that correct?
Sherry's not an employee.
He's asking if that would be okay.
No. No, it's not our role to do that either. We're not empowered to speak on behalf of the township.
Even though you're employees,
We are not employees, we are elected officials. We've hired Karen to serve in that role.
Well, you get paid with a W-2, right?
That's not the point, Dennis. That's the way that it's structured that way, and our legal counsel's shaking his head yes over there.
Yes, what?
Yes, the township board members are not employees of the township, they're elected officials, and then they each have statutory duties, so the clerk and the treasurer are different. The supervisor is the legal agent of the township, and then the trustees are elected officials. They're not treated as employees under the law, even though they are paid.
And you speak for the IRS also?
No, he
The
speaks for
IRS
our
would say they're
attorneys.
employees.
It's not an IRS thing. It's a legal thing. Thank you. Other folks have comments. Dana?
Dana Conley, over on Chandler Road. I thought this meeting was to tell the Senior Service Advisory Board what our role and your expectations for us. We got zero of that information. I did not hear one line item for our role.
Thank you.
I would just like to clarify that in the beginning, when the Senior Advisory Board started fundraising for the expansion of the senior center, we did have the board support. And we have been fundraising for the expansion of the senior center. That money was never for a new refrigerator or a new freezer. That money we advertised that this fundraiser is for the expansion of the senior center.
Thank you. Who's next? Go ahead.
Nancy Hoyland, Webster Road. Number one, I would just like to say, we do not want to run the senior center. We only have wanted to help and suggest things to make the senior center better. Part of our problem has been that we've not had a person that attends our meetings until now, Becca. The last 2 years, we've not had Karen or Taylor, anyone that we could communicate our ideas with. So that's where we're at now. But that's not all that I have to say. I just want to say that we are willing to do whatever we can to grow the senior center. We are outgrowing what we currently have. I mean, just adding a walk-in refrigerator and freezer is not going to work. It's just not enough room. You're still needing to accommodate more people. My opinion is, put that money into a new facility. I mean, I understand we have property that we could build something on. I don't know. But in that, our group, I'm sure, is more than willing to fundraise to bring about some money for this project. Some of the things I have in mind is maybe a pancake breakfast once a month. A senior center yard sale from contributions, donations from our people. Maybe a Tuesday taco night. Things that we would love to. I mean, I'm sure Dana would help me. We would love to go in and help and do things to grow the senior center, to make some money to help build a new facility and accommodate many people. Just my thoughts.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Other folks want to be heard?
Hi, I'm Deb Johnson. I serve on the Senior Services Advisory Board. Rose Lake is named after my grandpa, and my family's been here for generations. What I found really unfortunate tonight was I feel that statements were made that painted the Senior Services Advisory Board as this unreasonable group of people. For example, the comment was made that, well, doesn't it just make sense that you would first find out if there was interest before you would put work into it, effort into it? Well, the board did approve an architect, and they paid for an architect. That would certainly indicate there was at least interest in researching the project. So to imply otherwise is misleading. The comment was made, well, 88 things were put on here for activities, and boy, that, again, apparently it's believed that we unreasonably believe that all of those should be implemented. They're just suggestions. And it was just an idea, ideas thrown out. There was no expectation for 88 new things to be implemented. That was never the implication, but it certainly paints us as being unreasonable when it's presented that way to our town. And then lastly, the comment was made, they just don't like to hear no. And I think what we said repeatedly during that meeting was, we don't like to hear silence, because that's what we've been hearing. We have a question, we ask for information, we have been told, even though we're trying to gather information to act in an advisory capacity, we've been told we're forbidden from speaking to other people, whether it's staff, just to ask questions or say, hey, did you ever think about doing this? We're citizens too. We have the right, like any other citizen, to make a suggestion to staff. We're not directing, because again, that would be very unreasonable for us to direct staff. We're simply giving ideas, asking for information, gathering information, so that we can act in our capacity as advisors. And we have had repeated conversations about how we send requests via email and have no response, and a second request, and a third request. And it's unprofessional, it's discourteous, and we deserve timely responses. Every person on our board is not inundating anyone with information. We have Judy, who sends our requests. We don't overload people, and she's just not being shown respect, and that's concerning to all of us. And I think I can speak for everyone when I say that it's troubling, and this unreasonable painting, thank you, it's wrong. Thanks.
Thank you. Other folks like to share thoughts?
I'm Kim Fouts, Clark Road. I just want to say that I believe that it's imperative to keep the Senior Service Advisory Board intact, especially when you're not going to be replacing the coordinator's position. The Senior Service Advisory Board has a passion to represent each senior in our township. If there's a merge with the Recreation Committee, how would the pulse of the Senior Center be represented? The success of the Senior Center is because of the personal relationships with the Senior Service Advisory Board members and the attendees. Another point I want to make is that I went to several area senior centers, and they all had a beautiful greeting area that was bright and cheery. There was a communication board. There was a resource spot right at the front. there was somebody there greeting everybody and making them feel important. And I know it was mentioned tonight that the money has to be guarded, but I personally know that there's an area, high school that I work for, where we serve 550 students every day, and the cash registers are right in the midst of where they are, and the drawers automatically lock, and the key is on the hand of the cashier, and the money is always safe. So I think that we could put a desk at that front area and revamp it a bit. And I know that when we had the community conversations, one of the things that were brought up over and over again was they want a fresh look in the senior center, a brighter paint, maybe some pictures, some curtains, just a change for them, something that shows that the Board of Trustees is listening to them, that wouldn't cost a lot of money, but it would be impactful to those that are using the center every day or when it's open. So my last comment is, there's 40,000-ish money in this fund that has been from the volunteers at the senior center that have raised this money. And it seemed like tonight it was like, well, that money could go to the walk-in refrigerator and the walk-in freezer and everyone would benefit. But as you heard before, there's grant money out there. Who's going to see if there's some possible grant money before we just go and say the easy thing is to use up that 40,000 so it'll just go away? I just think that somebody should consider other resources besides that nest egg that's been worked on for several years, just for a new freezer and a new fridge. Not to say that those things aren't important, but maybe there's grant money out there that would assist us with that. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there other folks who'd like to address the board?
Hi, Ray Kotke, Park Lake Road. I'm going to change the water on the minis a little bit for you. Earlier tonight, you stated that nobody but the staff is cleared to get quotes. Then you also stated earlier, I believe, or we did, that we revamped the CIP process so that only advisory boards or commissions or committees could apply for a CIP. Part of a CIP process is to get quotes.
Yeah.
So that's a dichotomy, isn't it?
No, you just work through staff to get those quotes.
Really?
Yes.
Is that a change from before, or has that always been?
No.
I don't recall seeing that in the CIP booklet.
It may not be in the CIP booklet, but
Wouldn't
it's
it
a
be?
function of how we operate as a legal entity.
I think it'd behoove us to put it in the CIP booklet that you hand out to people that are potentially doing a CIP.
Yeah, do you know a guy who's on that committee?
I think I do.
I think that's a good suggestion.
I just heard that tonight, and I went, wait a minute, how the heck would you do a CIP? So anyway, that was, I've broken the law then apparently, because before I've worked on a CIP, and I actually got what I would call a RFE. That would be a request for estimate. Not a quote, not a quote. So anyway, I just thought I'd throw that out there to.
Our officers are outside waiting for you.
Exactly. Thanks. With that, I'm gonna leave.
Thanks, Ray.
I agree with Ray. Judy Gardy. I've done a lot of CIP proposals, and they always ask you for a budget. And in order to get a budget for that project, you have to develop a relationship with a bidder. You have to go out and find out how much it would cost. If we couldn't find out how much the project would cost, we couldn't turn it into the planning commission in order to be considered for the CIP. So I think you're wrong. But over and above that, I will say that our strategic plan, which we presented to you, which you accepted, in that, goal 5 is expand the senior center. And it does specifically say in there that we will hire an architect and figure out what that will cost for you. You, as a board, accepted that as part of our strategic plan, and that's how we move forward. There are other goals and objectives in there as well. I sat right here and have given it to each of you. You might not have looked at it, you might not have read it, but it's what our work is based on. And we're under the impression that that was good with you. So if we present you with materials, with goals and objectives, and you don't agree with them, then you should tell us that when we turn them into you. And so we asked for an expansion. We came to you, we asked you for $5,000 to hire an architect so we could figure out what the expansion would cost. You agreed. You gave us $20,000. We didn't take that money. We didn't spend that money. We did hire an architect. We did move forward with all of your agreement. It was you who asked us to do it. So it's frustrating for me to hear you say that we didn't have the right to do that and that we were working under your advice. Thank you.
Thanks, Judy. Other voices want to be heard tonight? Last call?
I have a question.
Dana?
You have heard everything that we have said up here, but yet we get no response. I mean, no, we didn't really ask you a question, but do you think we're lying? Do you think we're telling the truth? Do you think we need more help? Do you think we're abusive to the staff? I mean, what's going on? We get nothing from you as a board for comments, except yours, Ryan. And some of the things you said were not true, and that was brought out already. So what's your opinion about things?
I think it's very clear that we're talking past each other.
That we're what?
Talking past each other. You all seem to have a perspective which I think is fair and right, and I think the staff seems to have a perspective, and the board seems to have a perspective. They don't clearly, they're not the same thing. Even me in saying that seems to ruffle feathers. That is not a hit on the Senior Services Advisory Board. I think some of the critiques you all have said are fair. I think what Judy just said, if she presents us with information that we disagree with, we should say so at the time. I think that's entirely reasonable. But I think the way you all project yourselves is not necessarily the way that it is taken in, and I think the way that our staff does that as well is not the way that you are taking it in.
But then why aren't we communicated with and told what the problem is? I mean,
What I have been told, Dana, is that you have been communicated with, and you disagree with the core of that comment. I mean, just you saying that what I have said is a lie, I don't think that's true.
Well, I can't even remember what it was.
You know, I bet you believe that, though, and I'm not arguing with you,
Okay.
but obviously my perspective is I was not lying to you. I think that is where you all and the staff seem to get torn up.
Okay. Nothing to say.
The other noon, I said, oh, pretty soon we're going to get our expansion. And the cook said, before you get an expansion, I have to have a bigger refrigerator and a bigger freezer so that I can put the food for more people in it. So you made a step tonight.
Thanks, Joy. Other questions, concerns, thoughts to share in public statement? All right. We'll wrap up that section then, and we'll go to final board comment.
Okay, I'll wait till next week.
All right, thanks, Judy. You can always send us an email as well.
Brian,
Yep, you can continue sending them.
don't she have a superintendent's report?
No, it was not on the agenda. Board member comments. Sherry, you want to get us started today?
Geez, well, I just want to bring up that about 5 or 6 months ago, I mentioned the PFAS issue, that we were going to have some federal government changes in our laws, and I hope you all noticed we did. And I would also like to say that I do believe our government, from the people that I talk to in Washington area, that they will continue to make these PFAS laws stricter and stricter and become like they are in Europe, that only medical equipment will be allowed to use PFAS. So I want us to think very carefully about a bond that will cover the expenses of this huge automobile manufacturing plant that we will have in our swamp. Because I was right the first time I told you guys, and everybody looked at me like I was crazy. And guess what happened last week? So that's true. And I also think, please, please do not turn the Senior Service Advisory Committee into the Rec Committee. I think that would be a disaster.
Thanks, Sherry. Jack?
Sure, thank you. Let me start by saying it's been our kind of our policy in the past, not for individuals to make contact with legal counsel. But I will present, and ask you, Karen, to please pursue this for us. So we started this meeting, I thought, on very, very good ground, and the meeting started at 6 o'clock. But at 6:09, Mr. Dennis Lardy came to the dais, whatever you want to call it, and publicly and openly, and you can look on, review the video if you want, publicly and openly accused all of us sitting here of corruption. Those exact words. I would like some legal remedy for that, be whatever it is. If I can't get legal remedy for it at this board, I will seek my own personal legal remedy. I'm not gonna sit here with my colleagues and be accused openly and publicly of corruption. I will not tolerate that. So I would ask you to seek legal counsel's advice on where to move with that. I don't know, I don't think he speaks on behalf necessarily of the whole board, but he certainly did speak it personally. I'm highly amazed that somebody would stand up there and do that and publicly accuse this entire board of corruption. I'm done.
Thanks, Jack. Jennifer?
I have nothing.
All right, I want to thank the staff and the volunteers for Tom King Junk Day. I've heard a lot of really great things about it, and I've seen some. Can we finish up here just quick, folks? Seen some really good things on Facebook and social media, so thanks, Karen, to you and your staff, and I know lots of volunteers made that happen, and some high schoolers as well. It's such a nice.
Yeah.
Some line, yeah, so it's just a really nice honor to Tom King that we keep doing that, so thanks for that. I placed at your desks in front of each of you and some up at the lectern for the public. The Michigan Townships Association had their conference last week. Yeah, last week, and they chose a new legislative policy platform. That's what they will work toward in Lansing and DC to support townships in the future. So this is just an FYI for you all to know what our membership organization is fighting for. I'm glad that Sherry brought up the PFAS. I did see that, Sherry, that what you said was coming did happen. What I really was pleased by was the folks from NORM saying that they use the European standards because it's better than the US standards, because that's where they're housed. That made me feel a bit better about that. So I'm glad you brought that up. That's it for me. Brenda?
I just want to thank everybody for coming in and sharing your thoughts, so we can, hear your side and we can understand stuff. So thank you.
Al?
Karen and me had a discussion today with the county on Webster Road out here. MDOT don't take their quotes until September. So it would be after September before they would get a chance to work on Webster Road this year. The word was 50-50, it'll be next year or this year. They can't give us a quote. The only thing we did ask them was that the day of the election, if they did get somebody working, that we would be able to have that road opened up so that people could get up and vote. That's it.
Thanks, Al. Kate, you want to bring us home?
Sure. I guess I would just like to let everybody know, on behalf of the museum committee, that they are holding their annual candlelight vigil on May 18th this year. That is a Saturday. It honors the victims of the Bath School disaster. That is also occurring on the same day as their annual Golden Alumni Reunion. So I'm expecting perhaps a larger attendance than we normally get at the candlelight vigil, though the last few years have been quite well attended. So I'm hopeful that perhaps everybody will be able to attend that in the evening. It is on a Saturday this year, which makes it a little bit nicer, and hopefully the weather holds. And also that I'm wanted to thank the township for putting together Junk Day. I'm always doing my part to support that, and I'm thankful that our community offers that to our residents.
The candlelight vigil's in the park?
It is in the
Cousins
park, yes,
Great.
James Cousins Park.
Do you know the time?
Oh, it's either
After dark.
6 or 7. I'm gonna say 7.
Oh, it won't be dark then. Thank you. All right, that brings us to adjournment. I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
We have a motion, we have a second?
I'll second it.
We have a motion and a second, any discussion? Hearing none, we'll take a voice vote. All those in favor of adjourning for the night, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right. See you in a week, 5 o'clock for the special meeting, 6 o'clock for regular.
It is 5 o'clock. Okay,
What?
it is 5 o'clock.
Yeah.
Mondays.
It is, right?
Pretty sure.
Karen, it is 5, right?
Mondays, or is it at 6? I think it's.
Isn't the special meeting at 5, the regular meeting at 6?